In this video, Joel and I are going to be giving you the top things that excite us about new board games.
That's right. If we're walking through a store or scrolling through a listing online, these are the things that pop out to us and make us go, ooh, I want to play that one.
First step here is I look for new games that fill a void. Now, not in my soul or whatever, but when you see a game that you hear about and it says, oh, this is a game that works for 6 players, and you're like, oh, do I have a strategic game that works for 6 players? Or something that's like, this is a short game. Oh, that's perfect. This I'm kind of missing a new short game. So games that kind of fit a niche or kind of fill a void, and maybe I don't have that theme or that mechanism type of game, and that's just like, it's a lot more exciting than a game you've heard about. You're like, oh, I have like 7 games that do that already. So
yeah. And is there a game that fills the void of loneliness in me? Because I'm still looking.
In recent years, solitaire board games have really picked up in pace. And that might be your best bet.
Oh, thanks. I love those automatas.
Yay!
I might be starting with the most important element of any game here.
Oh.
But when I see a game that has nice player colors, there's so many games. I know this seems silly,
yeah.
but there's so many games. Like Cosmic Encounter, one of my favorite games of all time. The player colors are so drab. You're like, do you want to play a bad yellow or a bad red? Or do you want to play something that's like, boom? And like, it doesn't excite you. Like, I don't want to like play that player for an hour. And having nice player colors. Why are games still coming out with really bad paint jobs? Yeah. So for me, I see nice player colors. I'm like, I want that.
It's so simple, but it's simple things in life.
But it's true.
Somewhat related to my first pick, but a little more specific, is a game that has a really cool, unique theme. Like a game that, I'm more of a mechanisms than a theme person, but sometimes you hear about a theme and you're like, oh, like Barrage. You're like, oh, we're trying to make dams to get the water and the energy to flow. You're like, oh, that's kind of different than you own a farm and you're trying to train workers. And I think there's some great farming games, but when you hear about a theme that you're like, the first time I heard about Spirit Island, it's well known by this point, but the first time I heard about Spirit Island, they're like, no, you're getting attacked. You're the people who are being colonized, and you're trying to fight them off. Like, those are just unique themes that stick out, and you think, that could be kind of fun. So I might buy a game based on just a really, really cool thing to grab me enough. Maybe.
See, I think most of your viewers on your channels are pretty certain you hate theme. I think there's definitive evidence.
That's
we went
true.
through every board game theme, and you were like, they all suck. I don't like
Not
theme.
true. It's not true.
You didn't like a single theme.
I think half of them were being up, I think. Roughly.
I don't believe
Roughly. Roughly.
My number 4 is something that can be a little hard to decipher from the box, but it does always stand out to me. And that is a game that looks like it's going to offer you some interesting decisions to make. Like, you're looking at it, and sometimes it's almost good to not know exactly how things will fall. You're looking at it, you're like, okay. Like something like Root. You look at the box, that is not a clear game how that's going to play out when you play it. And sometimes that's good. So looking for a game that looks like, oh, it's going to pit us against each other. I'm going to have to make some interesting, unique decisions, more so than like, I'm going to roll a dice and determine the outcome of these encounters. So that always stands out to me. I love a game that has I love games that have interesting decisions to begin with, but if you can see it and it's like, oh, this game looks like it's going to pit us against each other in a really interesting way, I really go for that.
I think in the modern world now too, lots of people, we said stores and we said online, but if you're like me, lots of us skim a rule book online too.
Yeah.
And sometimes you skim a rule book and you're like, oh, it's 2 pages long.
Yeah.
And so maybe it's fun for certain reasons, but yeah, sometimes you see a rule book and you can just see how the gears are going to work and you're like, oh, I want to try it. So that's a really good one. That's a really good one. Okay, my next one up is kind of a combo of 2 things that would be on the front of the box, and that is a publisher that I've come to trust and a designer that I like. And so, either one, I'm not the most designer-seeking, I think, gamer. I'm more view each game individually. But there are a few people I've just come to Phil Walker Harding. I just think, man, if I see one game with his name on, I'm like, okay, I want to try it. Because I tend to except Sushi Go. I tend to like his games a lot, just to bring that up again, digging that wound. But the other ones,
it's a good game.
But yeah, or there's some companies, I think Cosmos is great at 2-player games, but I think they're also just good at, if you're looking for a light or maybe light to medium game, I feel like they have so many in that category that if it looks like a good game, and it promises to be a good game, I feel like there's certain companies that you learn to trust. That, okay, I know this, it may not be the best game ever, maybe it will be, but it might be the best game ever, but it's just going to be a really solid experience. So a good company like you can trust. Go with the brand you can trust. But there's not a lot that I would just say, oh yeah, pretty sure. I don't like everything Cosmos puts out, but I just feel like it's a good sign.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I didn't write it down on my list, but it's definitely something I've thought of. Like, there are brands I used to love that they kind of ruined their name. You know, publishers that have gone downhill, but there's still some that I kind of look for, a designer that I'm like, oh yeah, like that guy's made some games that I love and that I'm interested in. Like, I'm not going to try to say his name and embarrass myself, but the Caruso and First Martians guy, if I saw he was making a new game, I'm there to check it out because I know he's going to make a unique experience no one else is going to make.
Yep.
It might not be great, but like I'm going to be there because I'm just excited to see like what he comes up with.
Yeah. That's a really good one. For myself. I thought you said it. I confused myself partway through. When you were talking, I'm like, wow, that's a really good pick, Joel. I confused myself.
My number 3 is a repeat from your previous one, and that is a game that has a unique theme.
Why not copy me? All my picks are great.
My next one's Best Designer, actually.
Oh, yes.
No, when you pick up a game that either like has a theme you never really thought of or takes an existing theme and kind of turns it on its head and does something new with it, that just excites me. It's like, oh, that's like an experience that I haven't really thought of. Even, there's a lot of games that I didn't really end up liking a whole lot, but kind of excited me they do something different. Like Fort's one that really stands out to me. I'm not smart enough to play that game because it's too complicated, but like that's a game like, yeah, a game about like building a fort. That's really cute.
Yeah.
Fog of Love is a game I love. And it's like, oh, like there's a lot of like romance kind of things out there, but that one's such a unique spin on it. So game has a unique theme, something I haven't seen, definitely immediately draws me in. Like, I'm interested at least reading the rule book. I want to know more.
Yeah, that's actually Camel Up was a great game for that, right? You hear about Camel Up and you're just like, it's a horse race, but you're camels. That's already good. And you're not the camels. You're the ones betting on the camels. They're like,
and they stack.
I mean, yeah, games like that just make you want to play. That's another good pick.
Yeah, thanks.
My number 2, Joel thinks is stupid, but you're going to love it. So when you walk through a store and you just go, oh, that game looks interesting, and you kind of reach out like this. Not like this, but like this to grab it, and you go, oh, like, you know what I'm talking about. It just has that weight to it.
Yeah.
And you just think, what's in... I wish I could think of it. I was at the board game store the other day, and I picked up a box. I was like, this is so heavy. It just makes you feel like there's going to be lots of goodies inside. The opposite's always disappointing. Like there's a big box and it doesn't weigh anything. Like, well, nothing's in this box. But when there's a lot in there, you want to just open it up and discover it. And typically it means there's a lot of moving parts. I almost said lots of components. Ironically, I don't think games with more components are necessarily better, but it can be exciting when you just like, there's a lot in this box compared to a box that says, oh, there's 4 ship tokens and 17 cards. You're like, okay. But when something is big and heavy, just full of like all these different types of things that can happen, potential. So just wait. The boxes being heavy is exciting.
It's even amplified for me more when the box is small. Like the first time I grabbed Between Two Cities, I was like, whoa, that is a heavy game for a not substantial box. Like, whoa, what's in this box? So, yeah, I'm with you. I didn't write that down, but that's a great pick.
Thanks.
My number 2 is any game that I look at the box or I'm reading the rule book and I realize there are a lot of ways to interact with players. It's not just you're on your island doing your own thing, interacting. Sometimes like a worker placement game, for example, could just have blocking. Like that's your only interaction is you're blocking on the board. And that's fine. It could be a great game. But when I see a game that's like, hey, not only is there blocking, but there's also like interesting ways you can do cards. There's like this other component over here where you're like fighting or something like that. Like if I see, oh, there's a lot of ways you interact. There's trading and each of them looks interesting. To me, that like could strike a really interesting game because you're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna have to be balancing a lot of different decisions here, especially if there's multiple players at the board. Like, you know, do I do the best thing for me? Take that away from someone. To me, that like excites me a lot. I'm like, this game looks like it is going to have a lot of ways where we're deeply involved in each other's boards, not just like me doing my thing.
Yeah, that is such a good pick. It was my number 6, the first one off the list. I was like, just competition. Like co-op is fine. I like cooperative games, but I might get excited when a game seems like it has a really interesting way of being competitive. So that was actually the first one off the list. I was like, I didn't want to make it go, but it had to go. So I'm glad you mentioned it. So it's my number 1 is my most boring pick.
Okay.
But it had to be number 1.
Why?
It's just so straightforward. It's a 2-parter. One would be it uses mechanisms that I like. I'm like, I know I like that. That's exciting. And then two, but even better, would be it seems like it has a new mechanism, or like it combines two mechanisms in some way you've never heard of before, and you're just like, yeah, I don't know. You just want to play it, or you just hear about something like you mentioned. We haven't played it yet, but the Great Wall, and you're just like, oh, I read that rule book some online because I'm a dweeb, and I just like, oh, the way like, okay, you're going to have like, I read like a year ago, but you're going to have like Archer, they can like shift upwards to the wall, like how this stuff works, or Iki, I don't know if that's how you say it, IKI, I think it's how it's spelled, but you're just like in like a Japanese market, maybe like in a dock market maybe, and you're just doing like a rondelle around, like hitting all the shops, and you can invest in the shops, stuff like that. I'm like, oh, I haven't done that before, and I want to do things I haven't done before. So probably my number one is like the biggest thing is a new mechanism or a new twist I've never heard of. I'm like, I'm sold. I want to play it.
I had that, and then I literally did this. I was like, I can't do that because it's such a boring thing. I was like, that would be so lame. Like, new thing.
Well, I thought about listing separate mechanisms. And I was like, that'd be kind of dumb. Number one, variable player power. No, number one, you tell me because I don't know what it is yet. Number two, variable player powers. Number three, like
my number one is variable player. No, it's not.
like, but anyways, like it just makes me excited. Like you see like a lot of things, you're like, okay, I've seen that before. But when you see one you've never seen, you're like, I want to try it out. So yeah, new mechanisms.
Fair enough. My number one is a little bit like my previous one, but it's a little more specific, and it kind of leads into new mechanisms.
Oh.
But it's a specific thing that I really like. I see. While you went for the most boring route, I tapped into my own heart and then found myself for my number
filled
one.
my void.
My void's empty. But if I found
void
game,
empty.
if I found a game that fit this, it'd be perfect.
Like and subscribe to the channel.
That
Send us free games.
my number one are games that I can play alone. Don't require friends.
No, it's not really.
No, it's not.
Okay. I was like, what if this was the perfect segue? Okay, what's your number one?
My number one is games that give new, really interesting social interactions. Some of my favorite. Here we go.
So basically, what we said.
Not like that. Like my favorite games around are games like The Resistance, Coup, Chameleon, Fog of Love. Like these games that are like half mechanics, but like a lot of social parts to them. Like some of them based on deception, some of them are more storytelling. When I see a game that's like, ooh, I could bring this into a group and it's gonna like get people talking in really interesting new ways that you might not in a lot of board games, I'm a sucker for it. I want it.
Yeah. So you said your favorite games. Is that a hint for the top 10 games coming up here in a few weeks? What might be on your list? I'm going to be expecting 5 social deduction games on the top 5. It is kind of a spoiler in some ways. You could take some things we're saying if you want to do some research and take the 5 things weighted by strength and try to figure out what our top 10 games are.
Check our list from last year.
If you have too much time on your hands, of course, if you have games that or things you want to add to this list, there's a great comment section for you. Or if you think this isn't that controversial, but for some reason you want to make it controversial and be like, it's a stupid pick, and go ahead, it's fine. I can delete it later.
And get subscribed because pretty soon we'll be releasing things that we forgot what the topic is. And get subscribed because pretty soon we'll be giving you the opposite. Things that we look at on a new game and we go, ugh, I don't want that.
If you want a little sneak peek, I actually wanted to do the positive one and he wants to do the negative one. It's like, honestly, it'll probably be more fun and more people will be mad at us. So
I love it.
Great. Thanks for checking it out. See you next one.
Blood Rage sucks.
Is that your new thing?
Yeah.